was 10 years old when this happened to me. I lived in a very nice neighborhood called River Plantation. We had a golf course, clubhouse, and Olympic-sized pool where me and every other kid spent most of our summer at. We also had our phone book for our community that listed names of parents and the children living in the household. One summer day, me and my sitter were swimming at the pool when I decided that I needed a break from the heat, and swimming was making me hungry. She drove us back to my house, and as soon as I walk through the door, I hear the phone ringing. I answer, and it's a man claiming to be a doctor, and he says that I have an appointment with him that day. He asks me some strange questions, but of course, I answer, not knowing any better. He asks me if I'm developing yet, and I say no. He asks if I've been home all day, and I explain that I've been swimming at the clubhouse. He then asks me if I'm wearing a swimsuit, and I say yes. And here's the creepy part. He asks me if I'm wet. And I remember pausing for a second, thinking, what a dumb question. And then I say yes. The man gets quiet for a minute or two, and then he tells me that he's supposed to pick me up for an appointment, but that if I wanted to have more time to swim, that he could pick me up at the pool at 3 p.m. in a blue car. So I agree to be waiting for him at 3, and I remember kind of being irritated that he was cutting into my swim time that day. After I hung up, I told my sitter about the phone call, and she looked horrified. I knew straight away that something wasn't right at that point. We go back to the pool but don't go inside. Within 10 minutes, 2 unmarked cars pull up, police officers. She speaks to them briefly, and then we go inside the clubhouse. At about 3:30, one of the officers comes inside and pulls my sitter away from the table she was sitting at to tell her of an arrest. To this day, I don't know if the guy was charged with anything or not, but I sure hope that he was though, because he actually showed up to the pool, and if I hadn't have told my sitter what was going down on the phone, I don't want to think about what could have happened that day. The events of this story happened about a few weeks ago. I volunteer at a hospital a few blocks away from the college I attend, twice a week, and it's located in a pretty bad neighborhood that's no stranger to muggings, stabbings, drug deals, you know, those kinds of crimes. During the day, it isn't too bad, but at night, you generally want to walk as quickly as possible when you're going somewhere. There's also this guy who hangs around the neighborhood who has quite the reputation of conning people out of money. I see him across the street every day on my way to work, but I've never had a personal encounter with him. One volunteer I work with who lives in the area with her mother told me that he's notorious for making up sob stories about how he lost his job, can't pay his rent, can't afford a bus fare, or any kind of story to get him some money. She told me that he lives with his cousin and he blows every dollar he has on booze and drugs. Once, I finished my shift. I went to the volunteer room to grab my stuff and head back to my dorm. Now, I wore a light black hoodie that had the 2 guys from Daft Punk and their logo on the back of my hoodie. This will factor in momentarily. I walked out of the building and put my hood up as it was raining a bit, and by the time I left, it was about 7 at night. I walked about a block down the road when I see this same guy across the street, and he approaches me. He says to me,
"Yo, man, hey, can you help a brother out? My daughter needs a new pair of shoes, and man, I can't afford them. Do you have any spare change?"
I actually didn't have any cash on me, so I wasn't lying when I told him that I had no money on me. He started telling me, though, that I had to have some cash on me, and to please have a heart and give him some money for his daughter's shoes. I apologized and told him once again that I had no money to spare. I walked across the street away from him, and this is when things started going south. He starts screaming.
"You fucking liar. You're fucking loaded, aren't you? I see what you're wearing. That must have cost you a fortune.
He can't be serious right now. This hoodie only cost me like $15 off Amazon. And besides, I already told him that I had no money on me. Why couldn't he just bother somebody else? He continued to follow me though, ranting and raving about how rich people like me spit in the faces of poor people like him and can't even lend a hand in their time of need. This continued for a block until I finally had it and screamed at him to just leave me alone. He just stood there, looking angry, and he attempted to throw a punch at me. I moved back avoiding it, but then he grabbed my arm and tried to pull me towards him. I punched him in the stomach and he let go of me. I began running from him and he started chasing me. I turned into a busy block hoping that he would leave me alone, but it didn't seem to deter him at all. He continued chasing me, yelling about how he was going to teach my rich ass a lesson about charity. My heart was racing pretty fast and I felt like I was running on autopilot. Police officers patrol this road quite a bit, so I was hoping one would pass by and see this guy chasing me, but it looked like I was extremely unlucky that day. I was trying to think of a way to shake him with my mind racing in all directions when my luck finally shot up. I managed to dart across a street when the light was about to turn green. I kept running and I heard the sound of a car horn and screeching of the brakes. I looked back to see him getting up off the sidewalk, so I believe that he must have jumped back to avoid getting hit by the car. He just stood there, staring at me, and gave me the middle finger and walked away. I didn't stop running though, and I continued to run for another block before I finally stopped. I leaned up against the lamppost to catch my breath, and I couldn't stop thinking about what had just happened. What was wrong with this guy? Why couldn't he just go bother somebody else for money? Why did he attempt to assault me, and why was he chasing after me? I felt more angry than scared, to be honest. I was pissed about what he tried to pull. Instead of going to the campus straight away, I went to the precinct and filed a report on him. And apparently, they told me that this wasn't the first time that he tried assaulting and harassing somebody on the street. They were working on getting him into custody. I started taking a different route to work after that, and I never personally saw him again. So I don't know if he ever was arrested or not. But what I do know is that the look in his eyes terrified me. I consider myself a skeptic, but the events of the last 2 months has left me, well, a bit frightened. At the moment, I'm living in a rental with my family while I commute to university every other day. My family is in the process of moving into a bigger house, which has them living in a camper near the construction site, so that my brother and sister can go to school at the new area. It's a bit complicated, don't ask. Anyways, this usually leaves me alone on the weekends, Tuesday and Thursday. So, to begin with, I would like to say that I do experience sleep paralysis, often, but have never dreamed anything too unusual. That is, until last month, September. I think it was a Monday night. I'm home alone and sleeping in my brother's bedroom. I don't have my own room. It's a small house. While the dogs are kennelled in the living room. I wake up at some point and find myself paralyzed. I feel terrified, like I'm being watched. And somehow, my head turns though, and I'm facing the doorway, which is open to the hallway. And there, I see this horrific creature dancing in the hallway, arms stretched out and walking slowly towards me. I can only describe this thing as naked and pale, emaciated and with no identifiable genitalia. It has a small hairless head, no ears or nose, with black squinty eyes and a huge grin that stretches way too wide. It shambles closer into the bedroom, It holds its arms out to me, and I can see that it has long fingers with nails. I remember standing up without control, and then the dream ends. I woke up to my alarm at 9 o'clock. I didn't remember the dream then, but I do know that I was really disturbed that morning. I left for school and remembered the dream while I was riding the train. I make sure to write it down, and a week passes, and by this point, I've completely forgotten that night. This time, I'm sleeping on the couch near the dogs, who I've let out of their cages. At about 5:50, I wake up to the terrible sound of my puppies yelping and barking, and suddenly, I get the same feeling as I did that one night when I saw that dancing creature. And I too start screaming because I can feel something right next to me, breathing, but I can't see it. It is completely dark, so I throw myself at the wall and flip the switch on, only to see nothing. There's nothing there. I calm the dogs down and check all the locks in the house, finding them all to be secure. I rationalize this upset as the cat startling the puppies in their sleep, but I can't shake that terrible feeling. So, this brings me up to date, and this just happened a few days ago. My mum has been staying at the house this week to watch the puppies because I have to stay at school for longer than usual. I woke up to a loud crashing noise from the hallway and a loud beeping. I immediately wake up and check it out, only to find nothing. I track down the beeping to our security system though, and I check all the locks, finding them secure, but can't figure out how to stop the beeping. I wake my mum up and she resets the alarm. I ask her if she heard the crash, but she says that she didn't. I check the clock and again, it's about 5:50 to 6. This morning, I again wake up at 6 and hear this weird croaking noise from the hallway. Of course, I can't see anything, but the noise goes away after 2 cycles, 3 croaks each. Nothing else unusual happened today, besides some weird electrical quirks like the microwave starting up by itself. But what should I do? Nothing like this has ever happened to me before. I can't write it off as just being sleep paralysis or a nightmare anymore either. I'll be moving out of this house in December, and then going to boot camp after that. I'm really worried that this thing is going to follow me. I'm really uneasy about this house, but I have to stay here for now and take care of the animals. Man, this whole experience is creepy.